Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say a few things about me because most of you don't know me. I started my academic career way back in the 90s. I teach English language and literature, and I took up translation studies for my PhD. So after I finished my PhD, I said, why not be a translator, because most of us are writers. So I thought, let me translate my literature into English so that it reaches a bigger readership. So I started translating. I picked up books which have some kind of a timelessness about it, not like localized issues or anything, artistically also. So classics fit in there. I took up classics. A few famous names are Lakshmi Purana, which is an Odia independent Purana, not in the shadow of any Sanskrit Puranic tradition. And then also a 17th century work, Chatura Vinod, by a very bright court poet, who in fact lost his vocation as a court poet because he criticized the king. So I did that. Then I have taken up some modern writers from my language, Shantanu Kumar Acharya, Rishikesh Panda, Ramakanta Ratha. You must have been acquainted with these names. So I have translated fiction, I have translated play, I have translated poetry. I was very comfortable with this world of translation. It was challenging. So I was doing that till I thought that I have some material in me as a creative writer. Since I was also teaching English language and literature, that language was also staying with me. So when I finally decided enough, I have done translation, I thought I should use those materials which are really bugging me to give it a shape. So that another interesting part is my mother was suffering from all those imaginary diseases. So like I have this, I have that, I have cancer, I have this. So I was taking care of the medical part of it. Then every time after the diagnosis, after the investigations, she was diagnosed with no disease. So that was it was humorous also. I thought, let me start a comedy kind of stuff. I started my book. I titled my book Carry On Miss Caretaker. The caretaker was me. So carry on Miss Caretaker, even if there is no disease in that. But interestingly, and that is what the art of novel is about, the book took its own course. It became a very kind of realistic text spanning 3 generations of women. So people whom I know very close from. So it became a proper kind of, it didn't become a comedy, like sitcom or whatever you call it. It didn't become that. It didn't become a rom-com. It became a proper novel, an English novel. I will read a few lines to substantiate why I call it a proper English novel, because honestly I don't like much of Indian writings in English. Honestly, I don't find that English, pardon my arrogance, it's not my arrogance, it's my conviction as a teacher of English language and literature. I find, I read an Australian novel, Narrow Road Down South. That's about the Japanese atrocities on the Australian POWs, prisoners of war, during the Second World War. So that English I found very, very different from international English. At the same time, that was international, that was Australian English. So obviously Latin American English is also different. Most of it, of course, we read in translations. So that international English has to be there if you are going to write a novel in English. And translation is another matter if you are writing in your original language. from which the best work as for my conviction comes. So that has to be translated again. But since this language has stayed with me, I thought I'd be writing in English. So now, what are the materials? Language is one part. You have to have complete command over the language you are using, be it your mother tongue, be it your the English language. Then the characters, as my co-panelists were saying, the characters, you must know them really. You can't, if you don't know the life of a bureaucrat, for example, or a minister, for example, you can't write about them. So I'm fortunate that I don't know them at all. Okay, so I am very much linked to the rural India, rural Odisha. My childhood impressions of rural Odisha is very strong. It has stayed with me. It will not go from me. It will stay with me. My next novel will be about rural Odishan countryside, which saw a lot of prosperity. As a child, I have seen it from very close in my village. So my next novel will be about that. I don't mind social realism as long as it's inspiring. There was a time which I have witnessed, which really inspired me. When I think of it in retrospect, I know what we have lost. So I want to document that loss. The Odisha that we knew, the Odisha that is now. I want to document that for posterity. Odisha was never a very poor state, as we would take very pride in stating. And then India, coming to India also. I'm very proud of my country. I'm very proud of whatever it has offered me till now. I'll not go against it. Forget about politicians. Who is bothered about politicians? This country is there. This country has given us everything that we want. The previous speaker was an MLA. I didn't find a single word of nicety or appreciation about this country, about this great country and civilization. I was really very, very disturbed. Why can't we appreciate? Why can't we be indulgent about our country when others are doing the same thing? Academics institutions are not only for agitating students. No, please don't do that. See, for this one night fame, for this one book fame, we can't misguide an entire generation, young generation, which have very impressionable minds. So I am very patronizing about my country, which has reflected in this novel. I have shown the ills. This is the fight of three women, and about great novels, which my co-panelists say that it is like everybody's. It is the writer's experience also. I will give you two examples. A House for Mr. Biswas by Naipaul. When I read that novel, it reminded me of my grandmother, not my grandfather. My grandmother, the struggle she went through as a widow, as a very young widow. And she settled down in Bhubaneswar. She reared her children, and they all became established. She made them respectable citizens, all single-handedly. And I'm not bearing a kind of brief for feminism. She did it as a human. So I'm really scared of being branded a feminist also, because I'm not one, I'm a humanist. I also suffer when a man suffers. So that novel also has this streak of feminism as well as humanism. She is doing her duty. She's also a caretaker. She's taking care of her children, very spontaneously, outside any slogan that I'm a widow, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. No. An Indian woman somehow finds that kind of strength in her. And that strength, I think, in the Indian context comes from spirituality, which is a very major part of this book. Our belief system, our knowledge system, our knowledge system in the sense our knowledge of these those herbs, those medicinal plants, our knowledge about these tithis and these stars, movement, everything, our cuisine, all those things have gone into this book. So this is a regional book, it is an international book. If we have to compete at the international stage as international writers, We have to do this. We have to take the flavor of our country outside, like Latin American novels. When I started reading, when I didn't know what pizza was, I knew it. I knew what it was, but because of my reading from those books, because they have lots of their culture in that. So saying all that, I'll just read to one more point I wanted to share with you. I finished this book by Milan Kundera, that is Jacques and his master. In that book, he has given an introduction also in 7-8 points. One of the point is, let not feelings substitute for your behavior. Let not feelings substitute for truth statements. So it should be, your feelings should be there. It should not interfere with what you really want to say. You can't just blackmail or mobilize your readers through saying something very personal which happened to you. Everybody has their own struggle. We can't just throw it on others. So that way he says that Dostoevsky's world is quite intimidating to him, because we all know that he was a humor. He handled pain through humor. So that is what he says. He has taken solace or refuge in the Renassa as an option. So I also quite agree with that point, that our feelings are our personal. They should not really interfere with what we are trying to say in the novel, in the statements we want to say. And then finally, I'll conclude by reading out one just